Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBiase, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. A happy May Day to everybody. Today we are covering the reopening of the economy again, but this time from a perspective of the $22 billion professional services beauty sector. Our guest joining us today is Chesebro from Paris. He's a Senior VP of Digital Transformation at Coty, a little company, $9 billion global company with brands that are number one in fragrances, number two in salon hair, and number three in color cosmetics. Welcome, Chris. Quite a May Day over there in Paris. Is there a lot of celebration going on?
It's a little bit more calm than it has been in the past few years. Thankfully, people are still respecting the lockdowns and the streets are pretty quiet in comparison to what we've seen in the past. So a good May Day.
But is it a holiday? Like in the States, it's not.
It is a holiday. It's a full bank holiday. Most companies are closed for the day. So most people are going to be at home or getting a little bit of shopping done, but a lot of the stores and a lot of the grocery stores and things like that are closed today as well. So it's a pretty big deal here in France.
Yes, of course. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into some stats. There's last time I checked, over 1 million salons in the United States, over 3 million globally. And with the exception of China, which we covered this week, 90% of those 3 million salons are still closed around the world. And in 2020, Coty has been pivoting with plans to kind of help the salon industry survive and reopen and then hopefully resume services around the world. So I'm wondering, Chris, your professional beauty business does approximately, I checked, $2 billion in annual revenues, just your group alone. That's a lot of product. Why don't you tell us about the business a little bit, just to get us kicked off?
Sure. So the majority of our business is, as you said, transacted through salons with the hairdressers and the stylists and the salon owners who are helping consumers transform their hair every single day. So the shutdown has really impacted that industry quite significantly. One of the more significant industries, I would say, that's been impacted. So it's been a challenging couple of months, for us. And once we were able to ensure the safety of all of our employees and all the associates that we have worldwide, of course, the next logical place for us to pay attention to is how are we supporting the salon owners and the hairdressers out there. And the philosophy that we're really taking is there are thousands, hundreds of little actions that we can take with all of those customers that add up to one big, massive impact. So, we serve around 250,000 hairdressers and salons and nail salons worldwide. And our objective is to touch as many of them with help in terms of how to access the different government programs to support employees in markets, especially in Europe. Helping them set up virtual e-commerce storefronts to be able to sell products to consumers directly. We've really pivoted all of our educators globally who would normally be in salons giving seminars or in one of our studios giving seminars teaching new techniques. We've pivoted them to digital education. We've made the vast majority of our digital education free during this time. So while people are at home, they're at least able to also up their craft a little bit. So our philosophy has been really built on the foundation that the big brand that we have in our portfolio, Wella Professionals, there's this concept of family around it. And if you look at the hashtags Wella Love, Wella Family, you'll see there's tons of engagement around that. And even more so now because people are at home and really interacting with each other. So our approach and our philosophy has been built on that concept of family and reaching out and touching as many of those people as we possibly can.
And $2 billion is a lot of annual revenue. How did this group get started, this division?
Well, Wella as a brand is 140 years old. It was founded in Germany. So it's been around for a lot longer than probably our collective ages on the phone. And
definitely longer than this podcast. Sure.
Absolutely. And the other big brand in our portfolio is OPI, and then we also have a big brand named GHD. And between the three of them, we have about 200 years of collective history. We've been part of the Coty family since 2017. Prior to that, some of the brands were with Procter and Gamble. But our core group is based in Geneva. We're a slightly dispersed group, but was the big foundation was Wella Professionals, salon hair color, and that's really what our core is today as well.
Right. Got it. So looking ahead, it's nice that you pivoted during the crisis and have really helped out a lot of your partners and your channel distribution networks. Many
Yep.
big brands, a lot of big brands have stepped up and done that, but not all of them. So
Yes.
that's good to see. I was looking at some stats last night, and according to Klein, it says the industry is set to have a pretty much a slow recovery over the next 5 years. They cited a almost 2% drop in service revenues by 2025.
Right.
That seemed a little, I don't know, a little rough. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that number?
My personal perspective is that it's probably a little conservative. I don't believe that we're going to take that long to recover. In the markets that are starting to open back up, Switzerland and Austria opened up earlier this week. Germany is opening next week. The week after, France is opening up. We're hearing most likely beginning of June for the UK. China's back to 90% plus capacity, and demand is there. People are chomping at the bit to get into salons again.
I heard you.
They've
Yeah, I heard you
missed their
can't get
hairdressers.
I heard you can't
Yeah,
get an appointment there.
it's tough. I was supposed to go see the woman who cuts my hair tomorrow. The appointment got canceled, obviously, a couple weeks ago, and now I have no idea when I'm going to be able to see her again.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do any trimming or anything like that while I'm at home. I'm going to stay with her and wait till I can go back and see Elodie again. But joking aside, the demand is there. You're seeing all sorts of memes on social media about people with letting their roots grow out. We have seen increases in consumption for at-home hair color products during this time. But in almost every market, and I haven't done this exhaustively, but anecdotally, there's a lot more demand than there is going to be supply in the first couple of months afterwards. So then it's really just about how are we supporting the salons and the hairdressers of continuing that demand. They come back in, they are able to create the best possible experience for their customers. Because it's going to be different. They're not, especially in Western markets, they're not going to be used to having people with gloves and masks and things like that on.
Right.
So we have an obligation to help the hairdressers and the salon owners figure out how to make that experience as best as possible. So we make sure that we continue down the path of building a big business in the future and turning that 5 years into something much shorter.
Right. Most of us probably don't know this, but this week apparently we celebrated Stylist Appreciation Day.
Yes.
But millions of us, including me, are like craving a haircut, or
Yeah.
I've got a lot of friends that want to get like manicures and all that stuff again. So
Yes.
there's probably not much to celebrate. What did you guys do to do Stylist Appreciation Week here?
So yesterday was Stylist Appreciation Day, and the focus was really on the community. We have a community on Facebook of around 30,000 people who are highly active. I recently dove back into that community and started seeing the different conversations that people are having. And I can tell you that my Facebook notifications are blowing up at the moment for all the conversations going back and forth. But the focus was really on the individual stylists. So, for example, our head of influencer marketing and corporate communications, he was celebrating an experience that he had with one of the famous hairdressers from the Sassoon family of brands about a year ago, and saying, my hair is long, my beard is down to here, but I'm sticking with it in solidarity, and I'm not going to cut my hair or trim my beard until I can see my barber again, which for him is next week, and then for me, as soon as I can get an appointment, hopefully will be in the next couple of weeks. But it's really about celebrating those individual contributions of those hairdressers, because let's be honest, they change people's lives a little bit for sure. But you walk in with one hair color, you leave with a different hair color. You walk in with one haircut, you leave with a different haircut.
Right.
And for women especially, we know this across multiple markets. Hair is one of the things that can make or break someone's day. If you feel like you're having a good hair day, a lot of people feel like anything is possible. But if you feel like you're having a bad hair day, it's a different situation.
Yeah, especially in the morning. So, and seriously, stylists fill so many other roles in
Yeah,
terms of just someone to talk to, spiritual guidance.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
amazing the lack of connection that's happened over the last 2 months at least, and how that's kind of I think some people may be keeping in touch with their stylists. You mentioned
Yes.
do-it-yourself products. We'll kind of get to products later, but the whole what are you guys doing to kind of support that? Or some salons, I've heard some are actually aggressively helping their clients through that.
Hmm.
We probably could have a whole takeout reel of blunders and
Yes,
trying to do your own
absolutely.
hair. By the way, yours, you
Yeah,
could just
we
put a bowl. You could put a bowl over yours and just cut it. It's really simple for
exactly.
guys. But you were talking about
Exactly.
color, probably, right?
Exactly. So shampoo, conditioner, those types of things, that's a whole other story. We've
Yeah, that's
really
easy.
we're in the process of pivoting and finding ways of delivering those products directly to consumers, but in a way that credits the stylist who would have sold it to them.
Yep.
So we have a B2B e-commerce platform called My Wella Store, and we're looking at that in North America, really specifically in the US, on how we can use that platform so a hairdresser can say to their customer, I know that you're just about out of that product. I can send it to you. You'll get it in a couple of days, and it'll also support me, and they'll be able to make the profit and the commission they would have made on that product normally. So that's one thing. On the color, we did see in markets, especially like the UK and the US, just before the shutdowns, big increases in consumption for at-home box color and root touch-up products, which we know consumers are going to do because people
Yep.
don't want roots. In terms of the color that's used in salons, we believe, and most governments agree with us, that those products need to be applied by licensed professionals. They have an oxidative agent that, if not used properly, there can be allergies and things like that. So we believe, not only from a safety perspective, but also for the best possible result, that those things should be done by a licensed professional. And to your point, a lot of people have great relationships with their hair colorist, with their hairdresser. So it's something for everyone to look forward to after the lockdowns are up as well, for to be able to go back and kickstart
Yeah,
that relationship.
sure. Yeah, I haven't looked at the data, but my guess is Sally, who distributes a lot of your products, usually to salons and such, has probably had a big spike in consumer purchasing. Would be my guess. One of our board members at Revive actually used to be on the board of that company, so I assume you
Right.
supply them as well. That's one of your channels, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, they're one of our biggest customers.
So on supply chain, do you go direct to salons? You're using two-tier distribution. Without getting too boring here,
It's a
let's
mix.
just, how's that going?
Yeah, it's a mix of the two. So I mean, obviously our capacity right now has been decreased substantially.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying before, with other big companies taking actions, we pivoted some of our supply chain to produce gowns, to produce the hydroalcoholic gel. So we took actions like a lot of other of our compatriots have been taking as well, which is necessary to support the industry. But because demand is down so substantially during a finite period of time, obviously there's less capacity. But we have seen big increases in consumption in e-commerce, both in Europe and in the US primarily, and China is rebounding quite well. And we're still at a point where our capacity in terms of supply is strong.
All
But
right.
primarily, we do a mix of serving through distributors, like a Sally type of example,
Mm-hmm.
or directly to salons.
Right. Yeah. Sally's good company.
Yeah,
Let's just go with your China
absolutely.
comment, though. What can we learn from
Yes.
China? We've done this on some other programs, but not specifically the professional services sector. So we've got a big audience in Europe,
Yep.
Asia, as well as, of course, North America and South America. Any tips that you can kind of share that you've learned? A lot of industries, whether it's food, which we're going to talk about a lot in the next couple of weeks, or
Got it.
beauty or health, a lot of cross sharing of like, gee, we opened up and this is what happened. We didn't expect it. So anything you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that we've seen are also consistent with what we're seeing in the market and what's happening in the press and more generally. But the starting with reduced capacity in the workplace was really important.
Hmm.
Maintaining that social distancing was really important. And now it seems that they've done a great job of containing it. Our team in Shanghai was even having a team building exercise 2 days ago. So, they're able to go back to much more close to normal operations
Right.
now. We saw big increases, not just ourselves, but really more in the market, big increases in consumption in the makeup category and the skincare category. Because people, when they were at home, one, they're on video conference, so they want to have a face made up, and two, they don't have commute time or they have more downtime at home, so they had more chance to play with skincare routines. So for us, we were able to look at that and say on makeup at least, OPI is a big brand, really big in the US especially. It's really important that we make sure that
Right.
our e-commerce partners have enough stock of that product, and we have enough weeks of stock on hand to make sure that we address that oncoming surge of consumption. But we did see decreases in incidents of washing hair in China during that period of time, which hasn't really happened so much, I don't think, in Europe or in the US, but that's something we did see in China.
Is it one of the reasons that client forecast was so, I'll call it pessimistic, because it's such a touchy-feely? I mean, you can't go into a salon. I mean, they're
Right,
touching you, they're touching your hair and everything. It's like, so for instance, in nail salons, they're used to wearing masks, some of them. They don't, because
yep,
it's more of a dust, but it's more of a
exactly.
dust thing. Um, yeah, so you can't really, it's just separating people, and you can't really social distance much from that, except gloves and things like that. So maybe that's why
Right.
they're seeing a slow uptake. But
Yeah, I think there's
everyone I know wants to rush back. I mean, for
exactly. And
instance, in the States, you're in Paris, but in the States, uh,
yeah,
state
no,
by state, city by city, they're opening up salons. And there's a lot of
exactly.
arguing going on about that. So, some people are like, "Hey, I'm going
Absolutely.
to drive to Georgia and get my hair cut or something." But
Right.
slowly, it's starting to ripple. But it's a high touch business.
It is. There's a proximity, and it's a service business too. So the people are going to be. It's impossible to maintain true social distancing between the hairdresser and the consumer. But if the actions are taken where both the consumer and the hairdresser are wearing masks or wearing some other form of personal protective equipment, you can get a haircut and do a hair coloring as a consumer with a mask on it. It's possible. The hairdresser can be wearing a mask and potentially a shield. And there's great collaboration between, I would say, the industry associations, the manufacturers, and the governments on defining what the guidelines need to look like country by country. Originally, the Italian government was planning on opening up salons not until June, and
Right.
thanks to some actions by the industry association in Italy and through ourselves, that date has been moved up into May. So there's, I think, very strong collaboration between the different parties to define what safe is.
Right.
And that's important because everyone needs to feel safe in order to go back, and that might be why there's a question mark, because you think about travel, at least from what I'm seeing as an avid traveler, there are very few consistencies across the different airlines about what the rules are going to look like. I saw today Delta was saying they're going to operate at 60% capacity until June. American Airlines is saying masks are necessary. Other airlines like Lufthansa are not saying masks are necessary. So it's,
Yeah,
I
JetBlue has required it. United Airlines is clear out the center
yep,
seats, but there's no, which is easy to do at this point. They're not filling them up anyway, but
exactly.
they're all talking to
I
each
think
other.
there's
But
the lack of consistency, and not to attack them at all, but
yeah,
I think the thing that's working, and I think is going to work well for our business, is that there's a solidarity amongst the hairdressers, because even though they're competitive in some ways, they're not competitive because they're in different markets, different locations within a city, et cetera, and they're a very social bunch.
yes,
So I think the consistency will help us, and will help us open a little bit more quickly. We're not going to be back to
yeah.
100% capacity day one, but I think we'll be able to roll back pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you can play a thought leadership role there. Sounds like you're helping them. I just think that
Exactly.
there's a lot to learn. The travel industry, we're going to have them on as well, but they can learn from the food industry. They can learn from
Yes.
professional services. I mean, it's one thing to go change out an air conditioning unit in someone's home versus,
Yeah.
being in a high touch environment. You touched on something that I've been making fun about lately, which is Zoom fatigue.
Uh-oh.
So Zoom fatigue,
Yes.
everyone is like tired of staring into the cameras. They're either not used to or whatever. But we have seen at Revive, where people take a selfie and do skin diagnostics, that the traffic and the interest in that has
Yep.
just been spiking 200, 300, 400%, depending on the application.
Yes.
Sounds like you're seeing that in in your kind of sectors as well. What we're seeing is
Absolutely.
people want more personalized diagnostics. They want more personalized treatments, whether they're handcrafted treatments, like in your
Yes.
business model, or something that's just a SKU off the shelf. But take me from like 40 products down to 4, so I can choose one that fits my profile. What
Yeah.
so we're seeing that big time in skincare. What are you guys seeing in terms of the future of personalization?
Absolutely. So I think there's a big opportunity in both makeup and in hair care. We are seeing some brands that I would qualify as smaller brands playing around in personalization. There's a brand called Pros in the US. L'Oreal has a brand called Color and Co. That's a little bit more on consultation than it is on personalization.
Right. There's a
We
couple
just
in the UK that are pretty well
Yep.
funded, actually.
Exactly. So I think there's an opportunity there because everyone's hair is a little bit different. There are archetypes, but everyone's hair is a little bit different. But importantly, environmental factors are very different depending on where you are. So the
Exactly.
impact of UV, the impact of pollution, the impact of weather, the impact of are you a swimmer and you're swimming every morning? All of those things add up to a need for personalization in terms of the formula. And I think the biggest thing is no one's really done it at scale yet. And I'm a firm believer that moments like this in the world, they don't necessarily create entirely new trends, but they accelerate existing trends. And I think the concept of personalization and something that's for me is one of those trends that we're going to see accelerate. So we have a brand that we were just launching in China at the end of last calendar year,
Right.
that is done in partnership with Alibaba, with the Ali Innovation Lab, that looks at all the different consumption patterns across their hair care database, and we co-created a brand with them off of that called Freology, and that I can tell you is a big priority for us in China moving forward, and of course China being more of a portend for what's coming in some of the other markets in terms of digitalization, we'll be looking at that very closely.
Yep. Same here. Same here in the skincare and makeup side. A couple
Yeah, there's
questions
lots of
coming in on
opportunity there.
chat. I'm looking off screen, so I apologize, but a couple
No,
chat
no, all good.
questions. It's for you, not me. Since the uptick in social media, uptick is kind of an understatement. Uh, Social media consumption, how's Coty using social media to keep consumers talking about your brands? Example, utilizing
Mhm.
influencers to do DIY skincare routines and et cetera.
So on the skincare piece, I can't address because that falls under a different team. But
Yeah,
under our
maybe that
community,
one was for me. I don't know, but
yeah.
go ahead. It's
But
all
on
related.
the exactly, it's all tied. But we have very strong communities, both of our professionals and our consumers. Wella has a community called Passionistas. OPI has a Manny community.
And these are pro
Our
based, right?
they're a mix. They're a
Oh, they are.
mix.
Okay. So
So
consumers and pros.
exactly,
Good. That's good. I
exactly.
like
So it's a
that.
mixture of both. They're communities that we've been engaging with for years now. Our brand, Wella brand, is in salon hair care is the number one brand in earned media. Same thing for OPI in the nail world. So our engagement with those communities has been around for a while, and I can tell you we've upticked it significantly. Like my point about our Facebook group for Wella earlier, because we have these educators I was mentioning. They're also
Yeah.
very social people, and they're the
Very.
ones that they qualify, I would say, as the micro influencers. A lot of them have 4, 5, 10,000 followers on their different platforms, so they're not huge types of folks, but they have strong engaged communities, and they typically have higher engagement levels. So we've really been working with them to dive into those communities and hosting daily webinars for the hairdressers to keep them up to date on what's happening with the business, what efforts we're taking to work with the governments on reopening, things like that. So we've definitely upticked our focus on that, and I think that's going to be something that's lasting coming out of the crisis. A shift to more digital education, a shift to more digital engagement. We're able to touch more people. We're able to interact with more people. It doesn't mean that the face-to-face is going to go away,
Right.
at least longer term, but at least for the next 4, 6, 9 months, there's going to be question marks about how much face-to-face time we can have. maybe longer than that, but at least for the foreseeable future. But we haven't seen decreases in engagement or decreases in the effectiveness of those educations.
No,
Those
I think
education
they've gone in.
seminars.
Yeah, I'll answer the question too. I think they have gone up, not just
Yeah,
because consumers have more time. You can't abuse their time. People are
no,
on tight schedules. That's why this podcast for years has only been a half an hour. It's just like get
right.
in, get out, tell me what I need to know. What we see in skincare, just to answer it, is Revive is a powered by brand. So we're powering the largest retailers, brands, and digital e-commerce providers out there. So it's really what are they doing in social media, and I'm seeing engagement off the charts. There's some companies that have always done it well, like Ulta Beauty is really good at kind of getting that connected tissue going with consumers,
Yep.
whether they're a customer or not. A lot of the Chinese brands and retailers obviously are way ahead of the curve because the social influence there is so much. But the trend we are seeing is that is going to continue to trend up, and the percentage of
Yep.
digital purchases in the United States is going to go, from under 15%, that's like total GDP, all the way into, eventually up to 50% over maybe the next 5-6 years. And personalization, diagnostics, people want to get quick information so they can quickly kind of understand what it is that they need to buy. And to your other point, it's not one of the things we always remind retailers and brands is like the ultimate goal is not always getting someone to a shopping cart. It's everything you just said: education, information, applications. What do I do after I buy something? That is an incredibly strong conversation to continue to have with the consumer before, during, and after a purchase.
Yeah, that service ecosystem is critical, and I'm glad you
Well,
mentioned
you
Ulta.
guys, you guys know it really well. I mean, that's why we're talking about this segment. It's not just
Yeah,
about your sector. It's like I really believe that so many other sectors can learn from the professional. I'll just call it professional
appreciate that.
services. You're one sector of professional service, and in the United
Yep.
States, they're starting to figure that out. It's like no one ever used to talk about salons. That's all they're talking about now. Well,
Right.
when are they gonna open that, and tattoo parlors? I'm not sure what the
Yeah.
priority stack is there, but I'd probably go to the salon first.
I would say we're gonna choose the salon from our side.
You're not getting into
But
tattoo products.
it's funny you mentioned mentioned Ulta and personalization, because it's one of the
Yeah.
retailers that we're partnering with in the States we have a product called Color DJ, which is essentially
Yeah, I
a
saw that.
3D printer for
Yep.
a conditioning hair mask that helps extend the life of color in between salon visits. It's called a glossing treatment. We have it live in a beta format in a couple of markets here in Europe, but we're just doing the same now with Ulta in the U.S. So personalization when you're in an Ulta, it's a good step.
Right. If I had the rest of your senior leadership team in the room, what
Hmm.
would they be saying in terms of your growth prospects? What are you going to get into next? So tattoos, apparently, no, you're not doing ink and stuff like that. I thought it was related, ink. Never mind.
No,
Yeah,
I'd say
without signing an NDA over here,
no, of
what are you
course.
thinking about?
Our business is very heavily focused on in salon hair color, and I think we have a lot of opportunity, especially as we map ourselves versus our competitive set, to drive growth in hair care, and especially in premium hair care. The hair care market is overall is the biggest category in beauty, but that includes brands that are $3, $4, $5 and brands that are
Right.
$40. So it's a very big spread.
A
But
lot of
that
99 cents.
premium, exactly the 4 for 1 type of things. But that's not where
Right.
we want to play, and that's not where we have equity. We have equity with credentialed products that have a stamp of approval from a salon, and this is a balance that we need to play, because our commitment is to support our partners in salons, but also the consumers that they serve. So we've done this so far in a way where we're able to fully respect the work that we're doing with the salons, but then
Hmm.
there are sometimes new brands that can come out that can help us drive growth in the care segment even more so as well.
Chris, I really appreciate you coming on today. And any parting thoughts about, what you see in terms of the salon business coming out of the pandemic, and any words of wisdom to leave us on?
Absolutely. You don't underestimate the impact of multiple small actions. Sometimes you don't need a $1 trillion spending bill to turn around an economy or change an individual salon or individual hairdresser. Sometimes it's a combination of a number of small individual actions that add up to a much bigger impact, and that's really something I believe in.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us on a holiday too. Everybody, join us
Absolutely.
next time where we're going to have CEO Naveen Jain is going to be on to discuss the future of health and how do we make illness optional. And we'll also talk about things like flying to the moon. So till then, cheers. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you, everyone.